So today on DJ IJ Speaker Guy, we're gonna actually look inside of some CD players to see how they work. Um, the devices I have today are a Sony clock radio with a CD player in it. I've got a Iowa 3-disc changer. This one's actually broken. We're gonna look and see how that one works. We're also gonna see what the issue is. I've also got two 5-disc changers, a Sony and a Technics. The Sony I already removed a part off of to save time in the video. The Technics I have open because it's the first step in disassembling it. And those are both different too. I'm going to try to keep this video short within 15 minutes because for some reason iMovie won't let me upload a video longer than 15 minutes even though YouTube lets me. So there's an issue there. If anybody knows how to solve that issue, let me know. So let's get started with the Sony clock radio. Okay, perfect. We're down to the CD player on this ridiculously over-complex clock radio. There's 4 more screws left, and these are on some shock absorbers. And actually, the interesting thing about this is what's on here. This circuit board is a digital audio converter because the stuff that's read from the CD is a digital format that if you put it out of your speakers, nothing would happen. And what this circuit board does, one of these chips probably, is the DAC, as they call it, converting that into actual audio format, which then goes into this circuit board, which contains our amplifier, and then into the onboard speakers of the clock radio. And of course, that opens because I actually don't know why that shouldn't have opened. It was because I was pressing down on the actual thing, and that happened. Now, this clamp on here, I know you've probably seen these just hanging around in there, and you're thinking, what's that for? There's actually a magnet in there that when you close it, it sticks to here and clamps the CD into there. That's the first step of how this works. If I take this off, you'll be able to see we have a lens here and a motor spindle with a platter or whatever you call that on the end of it. Some people call this little thing the turntable, although that's more used for record players. This is a gear mechanism that controls where the laser is on the CD, and pretty much that's also called an optical pickup, and this is the tracking, is what these gears are. Is the course tracking for the individual tracks. And something interesting about this is a CD is read from the inside outward. It actually spins slower once you get to the end of these. Now, I have a little diagram of how one of these optical pickups works and how one of these lenses works. So here's my diagram of how one of these things works. Of course, I have this a little bit wrong here. I have it over here, but that doesn't really matter. Now, pretty much inside this black compartment with the lens on it, we've got a laser, usually mounted on the side, that shines through a mirror and through a lens up at the disc, and the laser light bounces off the disc and back to a pickup that picks up the light. And it's not that simple because, well, the CD has data burnt onto it, and when the laser light bounces off the CD, it actually it actually makes this pickup able to read the data on the CD somehow. I'm not quite sure how that works. And the pickup going out of it, which is probably one of these wires right here. I'm not going to touch the end for fear I could shock it because my hands could have static on it, and that's actually something that can kill these. And of course that goes into this board and somehow makes it to our amplifier. Of course, first we have the digital audio converter that converts it to an audio format that I talked to you about, and it comes out of our stereo speakers, which are the objects on either side that sort of look like eyes with the magnets on them. Of course, you've probably seen speakers on my channel, so you probably know those from other things by now. So that's what's inside the little Sony clock radio. Very simple with the gear mechanism and the spindle directly on that motor. So, what we saw in the Sony, here's the equivalent inside that Iowa 3 disc changer. The biggest difference between this and the little clock radio is this one has a separate board. For the digital audio converter, it's not just mounted on the bottom of this like it was on the Sony. And this is not just the digital audio converter, it's also another more functions. For example, the open close motor is what that is right there. But pretty much is almost the same. We've still got our gear mechanism. Literally, actually, the only difference on this unit, other than the Sony, is that this one's got a dust cover on it to protect it from dust when it's in the off position. Even the platter is the same, and I think that's the same model motor as well. Well, I told you that this one had an issue. I'm gonna show you what the issue is. Now, this gear just pops off. I want you to look at that gear very carefully. Do you see how the bottom section has some broken teeth on it? It's not supposed to be like that. That's been causing it to get stuck on certain songs and skip. And you can hear how bad that sounds. It sometimes makes that stripping sound. That's no good. But other than that, that's actually very similar to the Sony clock radio. Okay, so this is the electronics featured in that Sony 5-disc CD changer. And this is a little bit of a newer unit. Well, not any newer than that Iowa unit, but newer in technology grade. As you can see, this is a little bit miniaturized and slightly simplified in the grand scheme of things. This has, of course, we've still got the spindle motor on here. But where's the other motor? Well, it's much smaller. It's right here. Focus, please. It runs this worm gear, which is pretty much a corkscrew type thing. That is what controls where the optical pickup is on the CD. I'm going to say this is much less likely to break than a gear tooth. And there's the board for the digital audio converter. Of course, this one is definitely miniaturized because we've got new technology. There's not much on the other side of the board other than a few connections. This is the only... We've got this connection being used for the optical pickup, and this connection for the motors right here. That's what's inside the Sony 5-disc changer. Sorry about that long time-lapse segment. I sort of forgot how to take this thing apart. Anyhow, this is also very similar in many ways, but different in other ways. This is plastic, but that doesn't really matter. Of course, we've got another spindle. You can see the motor down there. It looks like these might all use the same motor, actually. And... of course, on all of our units, we still have the clamp that holds on to this magnetically, and so it spins like that. Anyway, what really sets this thing apart is not the construction being made out of plastic, or the fact that the circuit board's on the bottom again on this one. This is the digital audio converter circuit. There might also be one on a circuit board that I have over there. This one's got a special digital audio converter that Technics calls MASH. It's an abbreviation for something, but I forget what it is. This one, the laser is not moved by any sort of gears. It is controlled by an electromagnetic solenoid. And what that pretty much means is we've got an iron core here and a coil of copper wire that turns into a magnet the more electricity you put into it. So the more electricity goes into here, the farther along this will go, which is a pretty interesting system. And one thing about this system that's interesting is it totally subtracts parts, and it totally limits out the possibility that there'll ever be a gear breaking. And it's a similar solution to, like, say, the worm gear we saw in the newer Sony 5-disc changer. And so that's the difference in this one. And there's one more thing I have to show you. These computer disk drives. On these ones, you actually got the spindle motor integrated into the spindle. Of course, this one, the CD just clips right on there. We've got the little motor over here, just like the Sony 5-disc changer. And if you look under there, there's a few rails, and one of them is a worm gear. And once again, we've got a miniaturized optical pickup. So even these have similar components that make them work. So now we've got our goal. We've figured out how a CD player works with that first clock radio and looked at some of the different variations of the system. So thanks for watching, like and subscribe, and see you next time.